Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by the Pete's. We got Pete Worth and Pete Mohan. Fellas, how you doing?
Doing great, Mike. As I was talking to you beforehand, I am back from Madison after that enjoyable victory. Sorry I couldn't make last pod. But it was such a thrilling win that after about 15 beers later in the hotel room, we decided to make a play, a Broadway musical about that Marquette Wisconsin game. So
you're not going to sing it now, are you?
No, I'm not gonna tease it now, but just look out for that around like 2019.
So the real reason we are here today is because we've got a special guest, and we're going to walk through the Big East schedule. Marquette has 2 games left, and it will be Big East conference season time. So without any further delay, I want to welcome, for the first time on the pod, technically not the first time, Andy Fleck from Anonymous Eagle. Andy, welcome back to the pod. Thanks for joining again.
Happy to be technically back.
Yeah, welcome, Andy. Now I'm confused. Is it his first time or second time?
So the backstory here, folks, is that we recorded an episode with Andy to preview the whole season back in October, but then because I am a schlep, I just failed to ever get it up and posted. So we're recording a new one, and we're just going to walk through the Big East schedule here. We got tons to talk about. I think it's going to be a great conversation. But before we do that, I want to mention that if you are listening to this podcast and you haven't discovered Anonymous Eagle at anonymouseagle.com, it's the SB Nation website. They're on Facebook. You're on Twitter. You're on Instagram. You got a fledgling Instagram account, and that's right?
Anonymous Eagle SBN on Instagram. Everything else is just Anonymous Eagle.
Before we get started, can I just make an appeal to all the Anonymous Eagle readers out there? These guys churn out a ton of articles, and there's no comments. What's the deal with that? We all need to be better in commenting on Andy and team's articles because they put in a lot of effort writing that stuff. It's worth a discussion.
And Andy, how long have y'all been, when was your first date publishing? How long have y'all been around?
The site's been live since 2010.
Nice. So 7 years. Wow, I wouldn't have guessed that long. I guess 8 years, really.
Yeah, it was right around tournament time in 2010. It started in March 2010 and been rolling ever since. And I took over as the official manager of the site about a year ago.
In this season, in Steve Wojciechowski's 4th season as the head coach of Marquette basketball, we're going to dive into what the Big East schedule looks like. The Big East is solid this year. There are a ton of good teams. Obviously, you have your Villanovas and your Xaviers, but teams like Seton Hall have really stepped their game up and are playing well. So we're going to walk through all of that and kind of break down where we think Marquette falls amidst that. So I want to frame this up with some of the odds to win the Big East that Vegas is giving right now or has given recently. So we're going to start this conversation. Really, any Big East conversation needs to start with the Villanova Wildcats. They and their coach, Jay Wright, are the class of the Big East. This year, the odds are 7-3 to win the Big East. And currently, as of just a few days ago, they're 14-1 to win the national championship. So, Pete Mohan, Villanova, what is anyone going to be able to take them down this year? I mean, they look so solid in what we've seen from them in non-conference play.
We can maybe hope that they get through the regular season with at least one conference loss, just based on the general strength of the Big East. But I mean, this team is stacked. Basically, almost a Final Four lock in my eyes, that the way they've been playing, and undefeated 11-0 at this point.
Right.
Wins against some pretty good teams in Gonzaga, Tennessee. They didn't play the most challenging non-conference schedule. Nonetheless, a team to be reckoned with throughout the season for sure.
Villanova looks awesome. I watched about the first half of that Gonzaga game and part of that Tennessee game, and they look as good. I don't want to say better, but they look as good as that national championship team. The way that they move the ball and the amount of shooters that they have on the court is just a thing of beauty. And I think they are definitely, I mean, they're already ranked number 1, and I think that's justifiably so, because they look like the best team in the country to me. And Mikal Bridges has gone from role player, kind of like a do-it-all, jack-of-all-trades guy on that championship team, to a bona fide stud.
And adding Spellman to the lineup has added another interior dimension, too.
And DiVincenzo's played well. Andy, according to Ken Palm, Villanova has 2 of the top 5 players in the country in Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson. That's no other team could say that.
That's insane.
I mean, is there any reason to doubt Villanova this year?
I honestly, no joke, didn't even realize that 2 top 10 players thing until I pulled up the page. 2 top 5 until I pulled up the page to record this podcast. Yeah. It's insane.
It is.
I will admit to being slightly wrong about Villanova this year. I thought that, losing Josh Hart from last year was going to cause a vacuum in their lineup that they were going to struggle to fill. Wrong, because Mikal Bridges is apparently like Superman, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so let's we're going to do this as we walk through. I think it all sounds like we think Villanova is going to be the runaway favorite with the Big East here this year. I'm going to keep tally of this, and we'll add it up at the end. So let's start with you, Andy. What do you think Marquette plays? Obviously, they play Villanova twice this year. Yeah, Marquette plays Villanova in Philadelphia on January 6th, and then Villanova comes to Milwaukee, a game that we all hope to be at from the Real Chili podcast on January 28th. Andy, what do you see Marquette's record against Villanova this year?
I can't predict anything other than 2 losses. They miraculously pulled off that win. I do mean miraculously last year, but that's just a...
Creighton Reinhardt ain't walking through that door.
All right, so Pete Worth, what do you got for Villanova?
I obviously, it'd be tough to predict a Marquette win. Without Creighton, I think we're really going to struggle at home.
Without Creighton. I don't want to sound like a broken record. Can I give a win to Marquette? I'm going to say we go to overtime in one of the games and lose.
All right.
While at home, we take it to overtime at home. Yeah.
The one good thing about our road game this year is that it's in the Wells Fargo Center instead of on campus.
Right, yeah.
A little bit less of a home court advantage there, but still, to beat Villanova on the road is not to be expected, so 2 losses, essentially.
The phrase that comes to mind for this series for me is just outclassed, and I think we're going to be outclassed, and I think it'll be 0-2. So the team that Marquette is going to open up with in Big East Conference play this year, the Xavier Musketeers. Xavier has a very solid squad this year. They are at 9-2 odds to win the Big East, and they are at 33-1 odds to win the NCAA National Championship. Ken Palm has them at the 11th ranked team in the country. As I said, Marquette will open up with Xavier 2 days after Christmas on December 27th with a home game in Milwaukee. Andy, when you look at Xavier this year, this is a team that Chris Mack has put together in a way, and they're playing with an edge. They've got big wins already this year against Cincinnati and Baylor. They've beaten Wisconsin already, too, and they return players like Trayvon Blewett and J.P. McCurry. What do you see out of Xavier this year? And I think a year when they're looking to get at least to the Elite Eight, if not further.
Xavier's one of the reasons why I thought that Villanova was going to be due for a downfall from the top spot in the conference this year. This is a loaded team. It was loaded from the get-go, and they're proving it. The way they closed out that Wisconsin game was ridiculous. That was a back-and-forth game the whole way, and they ended up winning by 10. All of a sudden, they just exploded for 10 points in the last, I think it was 3 or 4 minutes, and all of a sudden, boom, it was just over. Also, if possible, I think we should build a statue to J.P. McCurry.
Oh, sure. Stick it right outside the new Bradley Center before any Milwaukee Bucks statue. Or the whatever, the new Bradley Center. That's what they should call it. The new Bradley Center. I just can't get over it.
So good.
I want to keep that Bradley Center name above all else.
The thing for me is just their depth, We talk about Villanova having, a few studs, and certainly Xavier has some high-level players that will probably end up, first-team Big East, but they just have a depth that is probably unmatched in this conference, I think. They run guys out there, and it seems like every year Xavier has, just an army of mercenaries, that they could run out there and just physically dominate you. And really this year is no different. The most surprising thing to me is that they have the 3rd ranked offense in the country, according to Ken Palm. If you would have asked if Xavier is going to be a top 10 offense this year, maybe you go out on a limb and say, yeah, but I mean, the team has just been incredible on the offensive end, and with the way they bring the physical nature every year with Chris Mack on the defensive end, it's going to be hard for Marquette to get a win.
Just kind of echoing what you guys said, the thing that surprised me about Xavier, not having seen too much of them this year, but I mean, Trayvon Blewett is an NBA prospect for sure, but I thought they were going to miss Edmund Sumner a lot, even though his career was kind of injury riddled, but when he was on the court, he was very good. And their point guard, sophomore Quentin Gooden, has averaged around 7 assists per game and kind of fell right into that role, and they haven't missed a beat.
Trayvon Blewett shooting 47% from the three-point line this year, so
yeah, that helps.
Really filling it up from that. And I've always liked Xavier. I love the way they played that Cincinnati series. I don't like Cincinnati. I don't like Mick Cronin, and I love the fact that Xavier just takes it to him, whether it's at Cincinnati's place or at Xavier's place. I love that rivalry. It's so much fun to watch. You don't want to see it get too physical.
Disagree about that.
Disagree.
I want the haymakers flying. That's my favorite part about that series is the haymakers.
That's the closest thing to the XFL that exists out there.
Or to the Pistons Pacers.
Right, exactly.
So quickly, let's run through this, recapping what we think about Xavier. Let's start off with you, Andy. What do you think Marquette finishes against Xavier this year?
I have this weird feeling that Marquette's going to stun Xavier in the opener.
I like it.
Wow.
I like it.
All right, so 1-1. Marquette gets the steal in Milwaukee. Pete Worth, what do you got?
You know what? I'm cool with that. Yeah, I think so. First game of the Big East season is always kind of I feel like it's almost always a toss-up. Everybody's kind of coming out of their non-conference, schedule and geared up for conference play. Being at home and with as good as we've shot the ball lately, I'll feel a lot better if we just demolish Northern Illinois and American. But yeah, I'm on board with the Marquette victory against Xavier at home, and then probably a loss on the road.
Pete Mohan, you gave Marquette a half victory against Villanova. Will they get that against Xavier?
I think that Marquette's going to go 1-1, but I think that the win is going to be on the road. Let me tell you why. I don't know that, I know we got a couple games here with Froling, but I just don't know that he's going to be integrated into the team enough in order for us to knock off Xavier in the first matchup. But our second matchup, we actually have a scheduling advantage here because we play DePaul on January 15th, and then we have 9 days to prepare for Xavier, and that game's on Wednesday the 24th. Xavier, meanwhile, plays Seton Hall just 3 days prior. So they're going to be banged up against a great Seton Hall team, and on shorter rest. We'll have time to get ready, prepare for that game, rest our bodies, and by then I think Froling is...
Rest those bodies.
I think Froling is going to be well integrated into the front court to give us a good chance. So 1-1.
So 1-1 from you. I'm going to go 0-2. I think that point is about Harry Froling is a good point. We should have mentioned that at the top. Harry Froling will be starting at least be in the Marquette lineup from here on out through the rest of the season. So we'll be coming to you soon to talk more about that. But we don't know what that looks like, and it's going to take some time for them to get built in. I think we go 0-2 against Xavier this year. I just think Xavier's too good, and I think defensively they'll figure out a way to put the clamps down on Marcus and Andrew. Mohan, you just mentioned that Seton Hall is a quality team. Couldn't agree more. Seton Hall and Providence they're not the two teams that scare me most, but Seton Hall they're just not a team that Marquette is built to win against, at least at this point. I think Wojo's maybe shifting that. Seton Hall so far this year has had victories against Texas Tech. They've beat Louisville. They've beat VCU. And they've beaten Indiana and Vanderbilt. So Seton Hall has had a solid season so far. They are 7-1 odds to win the Big East Championship, and they've got 80-1 odds to win the NCAA championship. So when I think of Seton Hall, I think of rebounding. Pete Worth, do you think that continues this year? There's no reason it doesn't continue this year with Delgado back. How do you kind of see Seton Hall shaping up this year, Pete?
I see Seton Hall shaping up.
Shaping things.
shaping. I see Angel Delgado shaping Harry Froling and Matt Helt into little tiny balls and flicking them away. Why you flick little balls, I don't really know. But anyway, yeah, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with again. And like you said, Mike, they're just not a team we match up well against. They're long, they can defend, and then they have the bruiser kind of in Delgado. So I don't expect us winning either matchup against them this year.
For me, it's all about senior leadership with Seton Hall. They got 3 senior studs, I guess 4 if you count Sonogo as well. Their experience.
How is Delgado a senior already? I didn't even realize that. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, these guys have grown together, and I think that for them at least, their goal is Final Four. Internally, that's where they think that they can get. I don't know if their offense is that good that it can carry them there, but defensively and physically, I think that they can run with just about anyone in the entire country. So I agree, this is a terrible matchup for Marquette this year, and they scare me, and I hate playing Seton Hall with this team because, especially now that they're all seniors, man, it's scary. This is a scary team.
Andy, Seton Hall is so physical, even outside of Delgado, and players like Carrington and Rodriguez, they're so physical, and it just gives me nightmares. Do you have the same nightmares about Seton Hall, or are you a little more bullish?
So Seton Hall has dudes all over that lineup. That's very clear. Marquette should have beaten them twice last year.
Yeah,
This is the exact same team coming back around for a second go. Marquette had them beat in the Prudential Center last year, and yet took overtime in the Bradley Center last year, but they did beat them. Mm-hmm. And that's with Delgado going for 14 and 17 in the first game and 14 and 19 in the second game. They took basically his best shot and split the series with them last year. It's the same team. I understand that they're better. If you compare KenPom offense and defense from last year to this year, they're better. I don't believe in them at all.
Really?
And what, you don't believe in Willard, or you don't believe in the team?
I get that they look like they're playing better, and that they're, as like you said, they've got all these seniors who've been growing up together, and so they're a more cohesive unit than ever before. But it's the same team as last year. Why? I don't have any reason to believe that they're just not going to start getting punched in the mouth repeatedly again in league play.
So the question there becomes, Marquette's offense is not as good as it was last year. Marquette's defense is, I would say, significantly worse, at least through the non-con, than it was last year. So how have we changed if they haven't changed? I think our defense is dog shit so far. Hopefully,
I would disagree. I think our offense.
You think our offense is better?
I think our offense is a little better than last year, and especially with the addition of Froling going forward.
That's true.
I think that actually the biggest advantage for our offense should be Froling being able to take Delgado or someone else or Sonogo away from the basket, and at least give our guys some kind of room, because it seems like whenever we play Seton Hall, any attempt to get into the lane is like completely thwarted by their defense, and you kind of just have to rely on your three-point shooting, which is tough to do with their long arms and our short guards. So I think that Froling is an added dimension, and I'm eager to see how that plays against Seton Hall's defense.
We'll need Sam Hauser and Sakar and Elliott and Kane to have good games against them, because we can't rely
Theo John too.
Yeah, I mean, because we need them
We need to draw fouls.
Well, they need to draw fouls, but they need to be active, and we can't rely on Howard and Rousey dribbling around and jacking up shots against them, because that is one team that will not work against.
So, Andy, the way you presented that made me feel a little bit better about our chances against Seton Hall this year. So I'm interested to hear how you think Marquette fares against Seton Hall in the 2 games this year. Are you going to go 2-0, or are you going to go 1-1 for Marquette?
I'm going to go 1-1. They are a good team. I don't want to take that away from them. But as far as Marquette matching up with them, like you said, you were questioning, is Marquette better and or worse than last year? Again, when comparing those KenPom numbers, the offense and the defense are actually almost the same.
Yeah.
It's this, it's kind of this, Marquette's kind of the same team, and it's the same dudes for Seton Hall. I'm going to go with 1-1 just because they're really good, but this is a Seton Hall team that ended up going 10-8 in Big East play last year. I don't believe in them as a Final Four contender.
Pete Mohan, what do you think?
I think we have a chance to go 1-1. Andy makes a good point that it's a similar matchup. I just think that our shooting prowess is enough to frustrate their team, in one of these games. I think it's probably the home win that we get in this case. It's going to be a tough one, though. I mean, both of us have a short turnaround after a Saturday game. We're playing on a Tuesday. Maybe it's one of those cases where we just get hot. I have a good feeling that we get hot in one of these games because it seemed like even in the two games last year where we played them tight, that our offense never really got going. So my odds are that our offense gets hot and we win one.
All right, so moving right along, let's picking up the pace just a little bit. Moving on to the Butler Bulldogs. So Butler comes in at 9-1 odds to win the Big East this year, and actually have 125-1 odds to win the NCAA championship this year. Butler was a number 4 seed in the tournament last year. This season they have a new coach, LaVall Jordan. Played at Butler, graduated from Butler in 2001, and actually spent the past number of years as an assistant coach at the University of Michigan and was part of their Final Four run to the national championship game. So a whole new coaching staff for Butler. For me, it feels like there's a lot of questions around them. It's not only the coaching staff, right, but they lost a lot of production from Andrew Travis, from Keaton Savage, from Tyler Lewis, the little short white point guard. But they are returning Keelan Martin and Tyler Weidman and Kamar Baldwin. So there's a lot of shifting pieces for Butler, and I think it's going to be a question of how they can put that together. Obviously, in conference play, they've picked up some at least a couple of decent wins against Ohio State, beating former Butler coach Chris Holtmann, who is now at Ohio State. They were able to pick off the Buckeyes. They've beaten Utah so far, and they actually play Purdue later today. We're recording this on December 16th, Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. But fellas, what do you think about Butler? How do you see the changes that Butler's going through shaking out this season?
I don't see them being nearly as good as they have been the last 2 years, which has still been kind of middle of the road in the Big East. I think they're a step down from that. Keelan Martin, I've never really been that impressed with him in some games. He'll get you 25 here and there, but he was actually benched for a significant portion of last year's conference season.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he was still coming off the bench, but he wasn't. He was taken out of the starting lineup. So they still have Baldwin, they still have Weidman. I just don't think they're as deep as they have been in the past, and I don't think they're as nearly as good defensively. Their numbers do show that they're top 40 defense. But I don't see them having the amount of talent that they had in years past. I think we can beat them twice.
I'm right there with you, neighbor. I just think that this is a good matchup for Marquette this year. You don't have that dangerous offensive threat in Travis, that they can run the offense through. I would agree that Keelan Martin is kind of like the Carmelo of Big East basketball.
Well,
kind of just like a ball-stopping wing.
In that case, they'll win the NCAA championship, so we're all screwed.
I mean a 38-year-old Carmelo.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, no, this is a team that Marquette should beat. If we're to believe that this is truly a breakout year for Marcus Howard, he should absolutely destroy their backcourt. Paul Jorgensen, get out of here. I mean, come on. Let's go. This is 2 wins for Marquette.
Andy, what do you think about Paul Jorgensen? Are you on that bandwagon or no?
No.
Yeah. How many people are on the Paul Jorgensen bandwagon?
So many.
Outside of Indianapolis.
Wait, Paul George or Paul Jorgensen?
Hooray for being a transfer from George Washington, I guess. I don't know. He's fine. Butler's the team that's going to decide whether or not the Big East is regarded as a monster conference or just an excellent conference this year, as far as I'm concerned. I don't super believe in them. They're really bad at defending threes. I've got Marquette beating them twice.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In terms of their three-point defense, they're close to last in the country in terms of how three-point percentage that they allow, and they haven't played a great schedule so far. They do have a game. It'll be interesting to see later today how they play against Purdue. So we've got Pete Worth and Pete Mohan, you both think we go 2-0. Andy, you said 2-0 as well. I feel that way too. I'm feeling bullish on that one too. So we all got.
That means we'll lose both.
And then they'll probably beat Purdue today by 18 points, and then I'll completely change my mind.
That's right. Hey, that's what it's all about. All right, so moving on here, we move to the Providence Friars. Providence has 11-1 odds to win the Big East Championship this year and 200-1 odds to win the NCAA Championship this year. So Ed Cooley obviously at the helm for Providence. This is a team that last season finished 20-13 overall. They were an 11 seed in the tournament. They beat Marquette twice last year. They return. The thing to remember about Providence is that they returned everyone from last year's squad. So we were talking earlier about Seton Hall and how that team has changed. This is going to be an equation of Providence returns everyone. Has Marquette improved enough to be able to take them down at least once? Andy?
It's almost everyone. Emmett Holt is done for the year with some sort of medical deal.
Oh, missed that. Medical deal. All right.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything specific as to what it is, but he's done for the year with some undisclosed injury or condition, something or other. So Providence is the team that I was most wrong on coming into the season. I thought they were a dark horse to win the Big East. I don't know if it's just missing Holt that's their problem, but they seem off to me, and I don't know what it is exactly.
Well, they have had a number of head-scratching losses. They lost to Massachusetts in a away game. They've lost to Rhode Island. They've lost to Minnesota. Minnesota, not a bad loss.
Neither is Rhodey. Rhodey's supposed to win the A-10, and it was at Rhodey.
Yeah, that's true. They was at Rhodey.
And they beat Creighton in the tournament last year, too. They got a good squad.
So it sounds like we're looking at Providence, again, who is ranked behind Marquette in the Ken Pom basketball ranking. So, Andy, it sounds to me like you're shifting towards a 2-0 or 1-1 odds for Marquette this year against Providence.
I would have said 1-1, but without Holt, I don't know if that's their big flaw. But I've got Marquette winning both games this time around.
Pete Worth, let's toss it to you. What do you see in Providence? How you think Marquette fares this year?
I kind of along the same lines as Andy. I was expecting them to be very good this year, and then the Holt injury thing happened. I've only really seen one game of Providence, and that was against St. Louis in one of the preseason tournaments. I was really impressed with their freshman point guard, Mekhi Ashton Langford. Really kind of springy, athletic point guard who can definitely shoot as well. He doesn't take a lot of threes right now, but he's shooting twos at a 51% clip. That's a guy I like, but in terms of the team aspect, Rodney Bullock and Jalen Lindsey are back, but I just don't think they have the depth that they've had in the past, and they've definitely struggled. I mean, even in their last win against Brown at home, Brown took them to overtime. And Brown's ranked 254th in Ken Pom.
Yeah.
Is that better or worse than Eastern Illinois?
That's a great.
Actually, it's worse.
That's a great point. I didn't think about that. But I definitely think my expectations for Providence are going to be lower, and they're going to be right around the middle of the pack. I still think it's going to be a tough game for Marquette, but I foresee Marquette winning both against the Friars.
And to answer your question, Eastern Illinois is about 50 spots better than Brown. So
markedly.
Markedly. Pete Mohan, how do you see the Providence matchups shaking out this year?
I think that there's still a good team in there. Obviously, they have great players and a pretty good coach. The dunk is not an easy place to play. I think that we end up going 1-1. I think we are going to be in both games and probably have a chance to win both, but probably too good of a team to expect to win both of these games. So I'm going to say 1-1 against Providence.
So Providence is a team that again beat us twice last year, almost not inexplicably, but almost inexplicably. Providence isn't a place that scares me like it does Butler. When you go down there and you're playing at Butler, that is a place where you can feel it. And I think
but you have angry cousins who will run at you on the floor.
That's true. God, when was that? Slippery floor. So I'm going to go with you, Mohan. I think Providence has a good defense this year. I mean, not great in terms of overall Big East, but I do think that they have a solid defense, and they may be able to throw a little bit of length at us. I'm going to go 1-1 with Providence. So moving right on down the schedule, we get to the Creighton Blue Jays, who are 15-1, have 15-1 odds to win the Big East. They actually have 66-1 odds to win the NCAA championship, so pretty high up there. So Andy, I want to toss this to you first to talk a little bit about Creighton, though I will note last season they were a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. They tied for 3rd in the Big East at 10-8, and Marquette was actually able to beat them twice last year. A couple of those were due to timely injuries and Marquette being able to take advantage.
Yeah, like I said, Providence is the team I was most wrong about. Creighton's the team I was second most wrong about. I was completely unimpressed with them last year once Foster got injured and then Patton went to the NBA. I had no idea how this team, who should not have been in the NCAA tournament last year if you took only their record, once Watson got hurt. They were not an NCAA tournament team after that, and this is mostly the same team back from this last half of the last year. Marcus Foster, who is on this team, and Kyrie Thomas are just wrecking balls, apparently. And this team terrifies the hell out of me now. I don't know I don't know if there's something different that Greg McDermott's doing. I don't know if he added some sort of wrinkle. I don't know what the deal is. But this team is scary as hell.
And Creighton's a tough place to play.
Yeah, that too.
Almost every court that we've played in the Big East is going to be tough. DePaul's new center, we're 0-0, so who knows? But we'll get to that. But yeah, Creighton is almost plays the exact same game as Marquette, except maybe with slightly better athletes. I agree. They scare me a lot too. But the thing about last year is I would have. Yeah, we did catch them at the right time without Watson, but we did a good job against Patton, who was obviously an NBA lottery pick. But we did catch them at the right time last year. I don't think that happens again this year.
So, Pete Worth, if you had to, you do have to. So, pick how you think Marquette does this year.
All right. Well, yes, sir. I'm gonna predict. I went 2-0 against Providence. I feel like Creighton is just a little bit better than us in our own game. So I'm going to pick 2 losses for Marquette against Creighton.
Oh, wow. Oh, right. I was not expecting that. All right, Andy, how do you see the Creighton matchup shaking out for Marquette?
Same thing, 2 losses. Pray that Marquette figures out these wins against Xavier and Seton Hall, because losing on senior night is not going to be a good time.
Wow. 0-2. Pete Mohan, I want to let you jump in here against Creighton. I know Omaha, near and dear to your heart. For many different reasons. How do you see the Creighton matchup shaking out this year?
I'm going to kind of use the same logic that Andy used about Seton Hall in reference to Creighton. And that last year, I just thought that it's one of those teams where if you are running up and down and playing great offense, that they're kind of shocked by you being in their same league on offense, and it kind of gets them going maybe too fast, speeds them up, and that's when guys like Marcus Howard and Andrew Rousey and Hauser are in their finest. That's when they're making their best plays, is when other teams are frantic and they're able to slow themselves down and make plays. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think we win both games against Creighton, and it's going to be the biggest coup of the season in terms of this team's RPI. I think we can be grateful that Creighton had a pretty good non-conference this year and reap the benefits of that by being better than them at their own game. So I'm going to say 2 wins.
I have not watched 1 second of Creighton basketball this year, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick 1-1, just because that seems like a logical thing to do. It could be a home-and-home thing, so I'm going to go with 1-1. So moving right along, we got 3 teams left here. So let's go to everyone's second favorite Big East team to talk about, and that is the St. John's Red Storm, who come in at 20-1 odds to win the Big East championship, and actually do not have odds posted as of just a few days ago for the NCAA championship, which is also the case for Marquette and DePaul.
Aww.
Yeah, it's too bad. So 21 odds.
Wait, why is St. John our second favorite team in the Big East to talk about?
It's just Chris Mullen. They suck. It's just fun to talk about. I don't know. It's my favorite. Maybe not yours, but so
don't speak for me, damn it.
So St. John's is a team that hasn't played the most difficult schedule this year. They did lose to a decent Missouri team and actually lost to a well-hyped Arizona State team. St. John's is ranked right around the same spot in terms of Ken Pom with Marquette. Pete Worth, want to pass it off to you since you're such a huge St. John's fan. I want to get your take on what you think their roster looks like this year and how you think Chris Mullen can do. Actually, and I should add that there are some pretty high odds. Chris Mullen leads odds in terms of first coach in the Big East to be fired.
So let that weigh on your soul while you answer.
Well, when I think of St. John's, I think of 2 things. 1, Ron Artest and how glorious he was. And 2, Jimmy Butler's sideline fadeaway game winner. This year's team, I have not a fucking clue about them. I can give you their stellar defensive stats and tell you that Shamori Pons is a bona fide All-American candidate. They are going to be long and athletic again, just because that's how Chris Mullen has built the roster, which has given us trouble in the past with their length and athleticism, but usually they haven't been a very good disciplined offense in the last few years, and we've been able to exploit that.
Can we rename them Discombobulated U? Because I think that's the best adjective for this team.
Send that email to the St. John's Board of Trustees about that. So I'm just gonna go 1-1 against the Johnnies this year.
Andy, I'm gonna throw it to you. What do you think about St. John's this year?
So remember when we talked about Villanova and we were surprised to find out they had 2 top 5 KenPom players?
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Is anybody else shocked that Shamori Pond is number 10 in the country?
Yeah, that was shocking to me.
Yes.
I just saw that about 3 seconds ago.
I tell you who would not be shocked by that, Eric Pond, who's been on the Shamori Ponds bandwagon since day one.
For a sophomore, that ain't bad.
Like, okay, so like he doesn't turn the ball over and he assists on a lot of stuff, but like he can't shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is the 10th most efficient player in the country?
He's got a shooting motion like Lonzo Ball.
Boggles my mind. We just published a mailbag on Friday to kill time during finals week, and one of the questions was, are you a believer that St. John's will finish higher than the Big East and Marquette? And no
way.
No.
Yeah,
I thought one of like the reasons they'd be good this year is because they had Tariq Owens and Kasum Yakwe clogging up the middle. All of a sudden, these guys don't play for Chris Mullen. I have no idea what he's doing with his roster.
Yeah, I don't know if Chris Mullen knows what he's doing with the roster.
Although Tariq Owens is the 3rd best shot blocker in the country, according to KenPom. That is something to be reckoned with, and I'm sure our magnificent midgets will have to pay attention to the scouting report there. Is that Coco in the background?
Coco's here. Bye.
Oh.
Bye, boys.
We just had an on-air kiss for the first time, folks. That was great. Yep.
It was me and Andy.
So moving from our first on-air kiss to the odds that Chris Mullen gets fired this year, 5-2. So that's a pretty decent bet that he's the first coach fired. So let's move into predictions for St. John's. Pete Mohan, fresh off that comment about kissing another podcaster, what do you think we do against St. John's this year?
I'm going to predict 2-0 here just because I think, similar to what I said about Creighton, but I just think that we're the more under control team. Yeah. St. John's, they have physical talent and they have an up-tempo, exciting team if you like turnovers and things like that. But I mean, it's
creating or
all the above. Marquette is just a better team with better basketball players instead of just athletes, and a better coach. And I think that we win 2-0.
For Pete and Andy, let's keep this short. What do y'all both think Marquette's record is against St. John's this year?
I'll go a home win and an away loss.
Andy?
Oh, it's 2 wins. This is
2 wins.
I don't care that like they're apparently the 3rd best team in the country at forcing turnovers. I don't care. Marquette's stomping them.
When I watch St. John's, they're not playing the sport that is known as basketball. They're playing something different. I agree with what you said, Mohan. They've got a bunch of athletes, but I think that amounts to 2 wins.
They're playing golf out there.
Right,
on a luge.
So moving on to
St. John's got a bobsled team. They're from Jamaica, New York.
Chris Mullen is basically the new John Candy.
All right, so moving on to one of the Big East teams that has that also has a new head coach this year, the Georgetown University Hoyas with famous alum Patrick Ewing now at the helm. Georgetown is kind of famously, I think we talked about this earlier in the year, but they have a piss poor non-conference schedule. According to almost any metric, they only have one team in the top 200. Top 219 in KenPom. They were supposed to play in Phil Knight's 80th birthday tournament, but they dropped out.
Too scared.
So because of that, Georgetown is still undefeated. So congratulations. Fellows, how do we think Patrick Ewing looks in his first year as a coach at the helm of Georgetown?
Tall.
All right, so aside from the coach's appearance, how do we think the team will look this year? Andy, maybe I'll throw this one to you first.
I am so tired of hearing Casual Hoya, my SBN sister blog, whatever you want to call it, yammer on about them being an undefeated powerhouse. I hate every single thing about Georgetown possible right now, and I'm struggling to care about I'm struggling to cheer for them against Syracuse today.
Yeah, that's right. We should mention they have a big matchup against Syracuse in D.C. today, so that'll be a telling game for them.
Mike, let's hear your thoughts being a D.C. resident.
Georgetown's a team where they've got to prove it to me. They have been a program over the last number of years that has had no real identity, and I think that's directly attributable to the coach. They've had talented players, but putting it together in a coherent way where they can actually fight back and get wins. I know they blew Marquette out. I was at that game in the 6th row. Humble brag.
Nice.
They blew us out, but I think Ewing, one of his biggest jobs is not necessarily just the talent, but what is the identity of this team? What is their go-to? For Marquette, it's 3-point shooting, and it's Andrew Rousey, getting chippy. What is Georgetown's identity? And I don't think that's going to develop immediately. So my sense is it's going to take a while, and I think this could be a series where Marquette gets 2 wins this year.
I don't know. I do agree that they've played a cupcake schedule, and they're 8-0 against nobody. I don't know what it is. We just sometimes, when we're the better team than Georgetown, we just take a crap and just don't play anything like we usually do. Turn the ball over. Maybe those are teams from the past that are poisoning my mind, but I just think that there's something frustrating about playing Georgetown, and I think that we end up losing one.
Andy, what do you think about Georgetown this year?
I hope they lose all of the rest of their games.
Yeah, you don't really need to say anything else after that.
There's some real hate. We're going to have to let's dive deeper into that.
But Marcus Derrickson and Jesse Govan are 2 pretty good players. Outside of that, I mean, they're very, very unproven. And just the fact that Ewing was so scared to schedule anybody, I think is going to be to his detriment. And they're going to get a rude awakening once Big East season hits. We're going to play them our second Big East game, right? At home. I think we demolish them in that game, and I think we win pretty handily in the other one too. So I'm going to go 2-0 for Marquette v. Georgetown in 2018.
I got 2-0 from Andy, 2-0 from me and Pete Worth, and then 1-1 from Mohan. So, folks, we finally got into the part of the podcast where we get to talk about the DePaul University Blue Demons. And DePaul, synonymous with dumpster fire. I don't think there's any way in the world we go anything but 2-0 against these teams, against DePaul.
Disagree. Well, let me start. I've been trying to tally my wins and losses, and so my overall picture, I think, and I'm going to go ahead and say that we lose a game to DePaul this year. Before anyone goes crazy, I know it's embarrassing.
What?
But I do think we're going to lose to DePaul. I mean, dude, we should have lost to Eastern Illinois. There's a chance that we can lose to DePaul. But according to my tally, I have us, even with losing this game, I have Marquette going 11-7. And in no case would Wojo be in the hot seat.
I'm not saying he'd be in the hot seat. I'm just saying I'd be pissed off and,
No, but to me, it feels like one of those seasons for Marquette where we win a lot more games against good teams than people expected, but we also have a couple letdowns, and that's what I'm expecting against Georgetown and DePaul this year. There's just something scrappy about them this year. I mean, they took Oregon to OT. Nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, that's a decent team. And, they hung around against Illinois and I think in the first half against Notre Dame. So it's not the worst DePaul team that we've ever seen. And frankly, having Ken Pom rank them at 119, if we lost to them, it wouldn't be a end of the world sort of situation looking at our resume. I think we lose to them because mostly, all right, here's the thing is I got in a little Twitter spat with one of their stupid Twitter trolls from DePaul. I think his tagline was "The Struce is loose," and I basically tore him a new one and basically completely shamed them. And I could probably go to hell just for the way that I went into him. So I think we're gonna lose.
You're gonna arrive in hell and instantly turn into a blue demon.
I will.
Andy, what do you got?
I actually think we're going to win games against teams we shouldn't beat and lose against teams we shouldn't lose to. Thing is probably actually really accurate.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
There's gonna be a game this year where Marquette throws up 33s and only hits 4 of them, and they're gonna lose to somebody in a horrifying fashion. Hopefully on the road at least. But it's definitely possible that it could be this DePaul team. Since we brought it up, Max Strus is apparently either the greatest shooter ever or a total disaster from how he's gone so far this season. And Ken Pom only has Marquette winning 60% chance of winning at Wintrust this year.
Yeah, but they said we only had a 27% chance, a probability of beating Wisconsin.
We can at least say that Wintrust isn't a reassuring term for the DePaul fans,
Yeah, with that in mind, I'm taking 2 wins against DePaul.
2 wins against DePaul. Pete Worth, what do you got for Marquette against DePaul this year? You going to get down to any of those games to see that beautiful new empty arena?
Yeah, I hope to. I'm just a mere hop, skip, and a jump away from downtown Chicago. So I hope to get into that new building. So at least there'll be one person there, Mike.
Great.
But
World's biggest Dave Leitao fan.
yeah. The thing I've learned over, since 2005 is to never take DePaul for granted, because they have given us some very devastating losses. 2 years ago being the one that is freshest in my mind at home. But that being said, I think we win 2 games this year. Obviously, we're a lot better team than we were 2 years ago. Now, I don't think that those are guaranteed, but I think it's just a prediction that we are the much better team, and so I'm going to rely on that.
So we're going to wrap up this podcast now that we've got through the DePaul game. We're going to wrap up this podcast with the overall record that we just predicted for the Big East. So Andy, you came in, and anybody correct me if you've counted up your own. Andy, you came in at 12-6. Me and Pete Mohan came in at 11-7, and Pete Worth, you just came in even with a 4-game sweep of Georgetown and DePaul. You came in at 10-8.
Pessimism.
So there is a bit of a range there, but clearly we're all kind of clustered towards the middle. I'd say most surprising for me looking at it is we all predicted sweeping Butler this year, which, even given everything they're going through, that I'm still kind of surprised we did that. But
one thing that I'm just worried about big picture, and I mean, I haven't been to a game yet this year. Neighbor, you were at a game, but it was at the Kohl Center. I'm just a little worried about the fan base. Every time I watch the game on TV, it looks like there's literally 0 people in the upper bowl. Not to sound like the old fogey, but like when we were in school, it used to at least like get halfway up the upper bowl in the student section. I mean, I think that could be one of our downfalls, and one of the reasons that we trip up against some of these other teams is lack of crowd enthusiasm in a game like around winter break. So
yeah,
everyone's lingering in the stands after the first half, talking to their friends, eating their popcorn, and not getting out in time for the second half tip, and that's why we lose.
Yep. Wojo keeps calling it out.
I'm just kidding, by the way.
You're not wrong.
Well, all right. I don't actually believe that. I'm just spouting off message boards.
It's true. The stands are half empty when the second half starts every single game. It's true.
I'm not going to base that on their wins and losses, though, I guess. But I do agree that it happens.
We've invited Steve Wojciechowski on this podcast in order to better communicate with the fan base so that he can build up support for his program and fill the seats a little bit better. So, Coach, come join the podcast. We have a growing audience, unlike attendance at Marquette games.
Ooh. Wow. Shots fired.
All right. I really didn't mean it to come off that way, but that's kind of the truth. All right, folks. So that's going to do it for us here in the Big East preview. On the Real Chili podcast. I want to extend a special thank you for his patience and also for joining the pod this time, Andy Fleck. Andy, what do you and your growing anonymous Eagle crew have coming up over the next few weeks that you're excited to get working on or to share with the people?
Probably by the time everybody is listening to this, we had the brainstorm over finals week of what would Marquette do if college basketball had a trade deadline?
Oh, so interesting. What would they do? So we're bringing in a big. Would we add some height at the point guard position? Any early thoughts of what we would do? Interesting.
I don't want to spoil it, but there's a strong segment of the fan base that's probably going to be very, very mad when they read it.
Folks, that is the definition of a tease there. So keep an eye out for that either today or tomorrow on the Anonymous Eagle, on anonymouseagle.com. You can find him on Twitter, Instagram. Pete Mohan, Pete Worth, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
It's been a blast, and just for the record, I would probably, if I had to make one trade, I'd probably go, I love the guy and all, but Camerata for Marvin Bagley sounds like a pretty good deal for me. So make sure to...
That was our second best idea.
Okay, all right.
I'm going to say trade Sakar for half of Creighton's fan base. And fill the stands up.
All right, folks. We'll be back soon. Again, Marquette has 2 games this week, on Monday, December 18th against Northern Illinois, and then on Thursday against American, both home games, and then a break until we open up with Xavier. 2 days after Christmas, we'll have a preview pod up for that. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Real Chili Podcast. On behalf of Pete Mohan, Pete Worth, and guest podcaster Andy Fleck from Anonymous Eagle, I'm Mike Lavender. We'll talk to you next time on the Real Chili Podcast.